This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
Shire Society.com. In part one of this edition of my latest rant about space, I spewed a layman's critique of some scientific plans. I spewed scorn on the idea of colonizing that awful Mars place. Although I'm not against people going there to research it and learn about it, that's different. I'm talking about people, the idea of going somewhere just to live or to build a better place for humanity. Mars is not the place. No, there are way better options. The moon is an obvious one. It may not be the best, but at least the advantage there is that you've got completely predictable weather. With the exception of maybe some solar flare-ups. It's always, I think, 215 degrees in the daytime, and it's always near absolute zero at night. And those are, of course, scary numbers for a person who lives at 70 degrees, but any engineer will tell you that as long as they've got predictability, they can be ready for it. The fact that it's got lower gravity than Mars and no atmosphere means it's much easier to get something from the surface up into orbit. Of course, it's much closer to Earth. And one big tourist draw that would be present on the moon that might not really be viable much anywhere else is that if you had a big enough dome or a big enough underground structure, you could strap on wings probably and fly like a bird. I suspect that flying like a bird is probably more fun than like floating in a weightless context. I think it's probably just the right amount of gravity there to make this kind of thing possible, practical. There's every mineral you'd ever want, every element, with the exception of shortage in hydrogen, and there's going to be a shortage of water too. And in fact, there's theoretically various locations that have locally plenty of water, but those haven't been found yet. Although I could be a little wrong about that. There might be one that was found. Anyway. It beats Mars. I mean, it takes a second for a radio signal to reach the moon. It takes 8 minutes for it to reach Mars. So you could have normal internet connectivity on the moon, relatively normal. But some folks say you could do even better than that, that it might actually be better to colonize nothing, as in colonize vacuum. This scenario would probably involve landing on a near-Earth asteroid and using that for the minerals with which you would build a floating space colony. Now, the near-Earth asteroid might, be, varying distances from the Earth. It wouldn't be as close as the moon most of the time. But the amount of energy required to lift off of it is very low, so you wouldn't need a lot of gas to get to it, you wouldn't need a lot of gas to get off of it. And you'd get that gas on the asteroid. You'd presumably pick one that's got some water, ice of course, and you'd ferry materials probably from that asteroid to the general vicinity of the Earth. Maybe lunar orbit, or the Lagrange point between the Earth and the moon, or geosynchronous around the Earth. By that time, 3D printing will be probably a well-established art form, and it'll be fairly easy to take a hunk of asteroid and convert it into the kind of structure you need in space. Now, initially, of course, you'd be talking about small space station type devices, but really the goal here, the thing that would be better than the moon, better than the Earth to live on, is a big floating space colony. If you can get one, maybe a quarter of a mile wide, maybe about 2/3 of a mile long, probably a cylinder or a sphere, you spin it, creating gravity around the edges. You aim it so just the right amount of sunlight is coming in, just the right intensity, and it starts to look like the outdoors. It has its own internal weather systems. It rains, it snows, it does kind of what you set it up to do. Depends on how you aim it, where you orbit it, how often it's in darkness. You get to control the climate. But best of all, you get to control the civic society, or you get to set up whatever civic society you want if you're the owner of this device. So it'd be like seasteading on steroids. The old world is collapsing, and it's going to take its slave driver governments with it. But what will rise up in their place? In New Hampshire, the Shire Society has a plan, a thriving web forum, and a history of action.
He didn't take long to come up with a plan.
You can sign up right now at shiresociety.com.